罐头上面的预告。
I think it is.
Very customer. Very customer. How customer of you?
Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back to Dead Malls, your one-stop shop for the spookiest mall tours and everything retail related. In tonight's episode, we return to the Westlake Mall in Bessemer, Alabama, this time to properly cover it in crisp 4K. If you haven't already seen my High A tour, I recommend checking that out first, but to those of you that are here now, let's dive into the story of this eerie, abandoned mall. Chronologically, you may have seen the High 8 footage first, as that was filmed back in March of 2025, while I was on a Florida expedition with the boys. A few months later, in June of 2025, I returned, iPhone in hand, to document the mall once more, this time capturing the insane state of decay in full 4K. Westlake Mall, one of the spookiest, craziest, most retro-styled abandoned malls left in the US, now stands on the edge of being reduced to nothing but dirt. But before I spill too much, I want to give a quick shout out to our winner who correctly guessed the next mall. Awesome job, Jack, the Mall and Coaster Fanatic. If you'd like to have your chance of being shouted out in the next episode, stick around for the next challenge. But for now, let's walk up, push past the brush and bushes, step inside the abandoned Westlake Mall, and uncover its obscure story, finding out just what it looked like in its final days before demolition ultimately begun.
Someone's chickens are going off.
Like a chicken alarm?
That chicken sound. Oh my god. There's neons lining the tops. Wow. Oh yeah, I remember this.
A patchy blue sky hung over the property as we walked in months later. By then, nearly every service door had been busted open, leaving the place wide open and vulnerable. Inside, it already felt different than my first explore. Emptier somehow, more worn down, like the mall was collapsing in slow motion. Walking in months later, you could feel how fast the decay sets in. Ceiling tiles sagging lower, more tiles fallen out, trees once standing, now tipped or smashed up. Glass crunched underfoot in spots where new windows had been broken out, and whole sections of the mall felt darker and heavier than before. It was as if the building itself had aged years in just a few months. We start here in the former Sea Feast restaurant, once a massive inline tenant, now just a spooky liminal space dotted with palm trees.
Oh yeah, there's the main entrance right there. It's all boarded up. And here's the main mall entrance, also boarded up.
The story of Westlake Mall begins over 50 years ago, when Indianapolis developer Mel Simon set his sights on bringing a large-scale shopping center to the industrial city of Bessemer, Alabama. In the late 1960s, his vision took root on the grounds of Westlake Park, where a small lake once stood. The lake was drained and replaced by a sprawling concrete parking lot, the foundations of a brand new mall. Fittingly named after the lake bed it was built upon, Westlake Mall soon took shape. At the time, this stretch of land along the Bessemer superhighway was considered prime real estate, traveled daily by thousands of locals and out-of-state visitors alike. Before the construction of I-20 shifted the flow of traffic, Highway 11 served as the main gateway in and out of town. With 3 anchors planned, anticipation quickly grew. By the late summer of 1969, the residents of Bessemer were eagerly awaiting the mall's grand opening, ready to embrace what they believed to be the future of retail in their community. Considering a good chunk of these storefronts are from the 1970s, I really wasn't sure what many of them could have been. I did have a few hunches on certain ones, but for the most part, this dark anomaly of an abandoned mall, with its stores from another era, remains largely a mystery. So if you remember what any of these stores once were, comment down below and leave timestamps. Regardless, almost all of them remain frozen, all in various states of decay. It was so otherworldly, peering into each and finding a different rotting backstory.
What the fudge?
Westlake Mall would finally open its doors in the late summer to early fall of 1969, though the exact date is a little hazy today, despite weeks of newspaper searching. What's certain is the excitement it generated. For Bessemer, this was a first-of-its-kind shopping destination, a sprawling 300,000 square foot complex which promised modern convenience, air-conditioned comfort, and a one-stop shopping experience. Not only was this a first-of-its-kind mall in Bessemer, but it was also first of its kind in the greater Birmingham metro, as the mall would draw crowds of shoppers in its first few months alone. The lineup of anchors gave the mall instant weight. Sears, Grant's, and Loveman's, the latter two being local department store chains, brought the mall national and regional credibility, while dozens of smaller inline shops filled out the concourses with variety and style. Stores like Lorch's, Zales, Musicland, Radio Shack, Walden Books, Super RX Drug, and Grant's Salon, among others, all lit up the dark tile-filled corridors. Most of that original brown tile still visible today, though heavily decayed. Small planters and trees also dotted the corridors, and in the center court lie 2 small fountains. Westlake, despite a few cosmetic glow-ups that would take place in the coming years, remained throughout its life mostly the same, with the same retro, wood-clad, and pink zigzag-filled spaces sporting the halls throughout the years. For local families, the mall quickly became more than just a place to shop. It was a new social hub. Weekends meant piling into the car, cruising down Highway 11, and spending the day wandering stores, grabbing a bite at Little Mike, or simply enjoying the spectacle of indoor shopping. By 1970, the mall had already proven itself as more than just a shopping center. That year, former Governor George Wallace brought his re-election campaign to its wide concourse, drawing an estimated 10,000 people into the small mall's hallways. It was one of the largest turnouts in its final run, cementing the mall's place as both a commercial hub and a stage for history. For a brief moment, Westlake Mall represented the cutting edge of retail in central Alabama. Positioned along the heavily traveled Bessemer superhighway, it drew not just locals but also out-of-towners passing through, who saw the gleaming new complex off the side of the highway as a sign of promise. At its opening, Westlake embodied everything people imagined a modern shopping center could be, and going forward into the 1970s, it carried forward that same energy.
Yeah, I wonder what this was. This is very cool. Very cool. It was a Jonathan's, I guess. Ew. Squelchy ground. Everything is red. It's so cool. I wonder what these blue things were. These little J's on them. This restaurant's been abandoned for years. A long, long time. Ew. I don't know. That's what I'm wondering too. That's a good question. They got a little stage in the back, like Freddy Fazbear's or something. Oh, you scared me in there for a second. Ew. Spider-web.
One of the most perplexing mysteries to come out of this mall is what I like to call the Westlake Ghost, which I call a ghost now in retrospect, but at the time, during both of these visits in March and June to Westlake, I didn't really think twice about it. But it goes like this. Some of you may know that in the beginning of our High 8 tour to Westlake, in the first visit, we saw a dark, lanky figure walking around in the far distance in the old Sears court. When we got over there and we found out that every entrance that way was still sealed or windows barred over. So how could this mystery person have gotten out? It was definitely weird at the time, but I guess in the moment of seeing an abandoned mall, your brain kinda quickly forgets about the oddity and scrubs the moment. However, during our second visit, and I really wish I would have gotten this one on cam, but at the start, I was walking up to that store with the collapsed roof, and I turned around. Looking behind me, I noticed the exact same dark figure just standing there on the other side of the center court, not doing anything, just standing there in the darkness, looking at the old jewelry store in front of them. It freaked me out quite a bit, which is why I sort of bolted for the cover of an old store, even if it was collapsing. When I looked back again, they were gone. What looked almost like a carbon copy of the silhouette we saw the first time months prior was once again gone. A shadow hiding from me amongst the shadows. And no, it wasn't one of the people I was seeing the mall with. They were both off in separate sections, and I was aware of their whereabouts. This third person was a complete mystery. It was so spooky, but I kind of brushed it off again in the moment, not really thinking twice about it. It was only later in editing that I started wondering, did I just barely escape an abandoned mall entity? Twice? Or was it just the local bum living in the back mall management office off the pile of old dirty mattresses? Your guess is as good as mine.
Hopefully. It's all colorful in here. Look at this. This is crazy. Ooh, there's some old TVs over here. This is weird. Wow, that's crazy. Look at all the colors. Style TV. Actually, that might be 70s. I don't know my TVs. If anybody knows what is this? Magnavox.
As we step deeper into the heart of Westlake Mall, now exploring the remains of what would have once been the old goodies, take a moment to imagine the noise that would have once echoed through these halls, and this store in particular. The laughter, the music, the memories, and the chaos of weekend shoppers. Now, all that we have left is silence, broken only by the creak of distant metal and the occasional drip from a cracked ceiling. This mall was such a trip, unlike anything I had ever seen before. Getting into this other half of the mall here, you'll see especially the rot of being abandoned in another era entirely, as this was all hiding for decades in the darkness. It felt like every broken tile and shuttered storefront down here told a story, me trying to uncover each one, while some of them never had an ending, and are still an anomaly. One reason why I just love exploring these abandoned malls, especially the most uncovered ones, is that I feel like an explorer, or archaeologist of some kind, rediscovering the sites of bygone past. It's like wandering through a frozen moment, except the ice is dust and decay. Sometimes I'll pass by a broken display case or an old food corn mini board like Lil Mike's or the grocery store you're about to see and think to myself, someone once stood right here, probably staring at that same sign, deciding what to eat, and they would have never, ever imagined that it would still be here all these years later. At least not like this. And now I'll leave y'all with just a little bit of raw ambiance as we explore this storefront that is literally from the 1970s. I don't think I've ever seen a more 1970s style storefront than this one right here. It was so freaking cool to walk through. And if you look closely at the ground here, you can even see where, I guess, the dark portions of the mall got fed up with being dark, so the mall sort of formed its own natural skylights in its own spots. And you're actually going to see those a few more times throughout the mall.
shadows left behind. Oh, everything's so spiderwebby. There's spiderwebs everywhere here.
Throughout the 1970s, Westlake Mall hit its stride. At its peak, the concourses were alive with color and energy. National chains complemented local boutiques, and seasonal decorations transformed the mall into a backdrop for holidays and community events. Sears, Grant's, and Loveman's all drew steady crowds, while the smaller shops thrived on the constant foot traffic. For a while, it seemed like Westlake Mall could be a permanent fixture of Bessemer life. But outside forces soon began to chip away at that success. By the 1970s, the construction of Interstate 20 just north of the mall would reshape the flow of traffic through the Birmingham area. At one point in time, the Bessemer Superhighway had been the main route, funneling thousands of travelers right past the mall's doorstep. Now with I-20 pulling drivers away and the mall without an exit, Westlake found itself more isolated, no longer benefiting from the steady stream of out-of-towners it once relied on. At the same time, the retail landscape across the country was shifting. Newer malls began to sprout up closer to Birmingham proper, offering hundreds more stores and fresher designs. Westlake, while still serving its loyal locals, gradually lost its place as a regional draw. Century Plaza, which had opened in 1975, was much larger, flashy, and more modern. Brookwood Village opened in 1973 near Homewood, capturing a more affluent tenant base who by then bypassed Bessemer entirely. And even Western Hills Mall, though older, benefited from a stronger location and steadier traffic flow right off I-20. Any plans to connect I-20 to Westlake all fell through by the mid-90s, as the planned Cedar Hills interchange behind the mall, which would have demolished over 40 homes, was never built. So the backside of the mall sat as this sort of bleak ghost town connected to a small backwoods road. This fact hit Grant's the hardest. Being in the back of the mall, the furthest and most obscure from the road, were all factors which made it the least traveled. Grant's would, in bankruptcy, close their doors in 1976, later being replaced by a consumer warehouse Foods. Loveman's would also close their small struggling store a few years later in 1980, which would be replaced by Birmingham-based Pizzett's. Star Service was probably my favorite old store out of all of them. I mean, don't get me wrong, this dark chasm is a gold mine of 70s treasures, but no space felt more surreal or ethereal to walk through than walking under the gold-tinted canopy of small plastic stars. I could actually imagine the old Muzak tune still playing over the broken speakers, as if the mall is trying to come alive one last time.
Very customer. Very customer. How customer of you? Wow, what was this? This mall is creepy.
Yeah, it was creepy at first. Distant echoes, creaking metal, water dripping from somewhere I couldn't place. Honestly, it just had my head spinning at times. It was the kind of mall that makes you constantly look over your shoulder, just in case. But I'll tell you what, stepping inside of this old, abandoned Food World grocery store, that was the cherry on top of this whole visit. This giant catacomb-like building, once the mall's Sears anchor, which literally includes a kind of food mall in part of it, felt different. Not just eerie, almost calming. In here, the chaos fades, and all I could hear was the wind gently massaging the walls, weaving through the broken vents and busted out windows, the soft distant chirp of birds just outside, like nature was waiting patiently to reclaim it all. The skylights above, yellowed with age, let in this faded, pale golden light. And knowing they've been abandoned much longer than they've ever been maintained, that really says something. Yet another timepiece from a bygone era. By the 1980s, signs of decline were becoming hard to ignore. Vacancies here and there, darker halls, fewer shoppers in the corridors, and a sense that the mall's glory days were just starting to slip behind it. What had once been the crown jewel of Bessemer's retail scene was now struggling to keep pace with a newer wave of retail. During the mid-80s, after a management change, there was a push to turn the mall into a factory outlet-style center, even though it still had a decent tenant base, another factor that would hamper growth. And in 1986, River Chase Galleria would open, a mega mall with 5 anchors, a hotel, office towers, and a scale of retail that dwarfed anything in central Alabama. When the Galleria opened its doors, it didn't just compete with Westlake. It redefined shopping in the Birmingham metro, instantly pulling shoppers, tenants, and prestige away from all of the older malls. For Westlake, already weakened by the loss of highway traffic to I-20 and an aging design that never truly modernized, the late 80s marked the beginning of a slow decline. Vacancies crept into the concourses, fountains ran dry, and the once busy parking lot sat more and more vacant by the day. Pizzett's would close at some point in the late 80s after the McRae's merger, eventually being replaced by discount retailer Goodies in the early 90s. The optimism of 1969 now just felt like a distant memory, as Bessemer's once proud mall began to slowly slip into obscurity.
Prescriptions.
The biggest turning point for Westlake, however, came in 1989, when Sears, one of its original anchor stores and main draws, closed its doors for good. It was the mall's most significant loss yet, and its departure was soon followed by the remaining name brands. In late 1992, ownership changed hands when Bruno's Inc., the parent company of Consumer Warehouse Foods, purchased the mall outright. They assumed full management and quickly began renovations of their own. These updates included new parking lot lights, updated signage, pastel paint themes, and the removal of the original fountains, planters, and decorative street lamps. In their place came the oversized pink and turquoise tile blocks, a bold design choice that definitely defined the mall's new aesthetic. Bruno's also shut down the original Consumer Warehouse Foods and began converting the former Sears building into a brand new Bruno's Food Max, a 60,000 square foot grocery store. Meanwhile, the old Consumer Warehouse/Grants building was mostly left behind. Aside from being used as a flea market a few times, it sat largely abandoned from 1994 onward. All of the mall's renovations officially debuted in 1993, giving Westlake the look it still wears today. Colorful tiles added to the worn brown floors, a softer southern aesthetic decked the halls, and fake potted trees were all anyone could want. But when Food Max opened a year later in 1994, it featured no internal mall access. The entrance was sealed off by a wall that still stands today, a decision that only further suffocated the mall from within. Despite all of the upgrades, the revitalization fell flat. Not even a new name could save it, as the mall was officially renamed to the Mall at Westlake in 1994 with new signs put up. However, it limped into the mid-90s, looking like it was on life support. With only Goodies and Food World holding down the fort, the rest of the mall was filled with smaller tenants like Sea Feast, Lil Mike, Handy TV, and World Gym, each one fading faster than the last. In hindsight, Bruno's purchase may have been poorly timed. Around that same period, there was renewed momentum behind the long-discussed Cedar Hill interchange, a highway project planned to be built behind the mall. For a brief time, it seemed like a sure thing, and Bruno's was clearly banking on that future traffic to save the mall. But by the mid-90s, the plans fizzled out once again, and the interchange never materialized. And just like that, Westlake Mall was once again left stranded, isolated, overlooked, and slowly falling into obscurity once again. Whoever barricaded the entrances at Westlake, can someone get me their info before the zombie apocalypse hits? I just want to be prepared, okay? Goodies closed in 2000 and the space was never filled, which left the mall essentially anchorless. The Food Max, which had been rebranded to Food World in 1999, was still operating. They had no interior access to the mall, just a sealed wall separating it from the rest of the structure. What's worse is its massive building actually blocked visibility of the mall from the road, making Westlake all too easy to overlook. By the early 2000s, it was clear the mall was on borrowed time. Major sections were either gated off or left without power on some days, and almost every tenant had closed, with only the occasional seasonal gift shop or pop-up shop lingering in the emptier corridors. Bessemer's once proud shopping icon had been all but forgotten. As for when the mall officially closed, well, that's where it gets a little murky. Some say it shut down around 2004, others claim it died with Food World's closure in 2009. Honestly, no one seems to know for sure, and that says a lot. The end came so quietly that not even the local press covered it. If I had to guess, maybe 2005, as that's the last aerial imagery showing a handful of cars clustered around the entrances, but that's just a guess. If you know the exact date, drop it down in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. What was documented was the closure of Food World in March of 2009, as a part of the company's larger bankruptcy issues. After that, the mall, whether you call it Westlake Mall or the mall at Westlake, was officially abandoned. Eventually, the property was sold to a local used car dealer named Anthony Underwood, who began storing vehicles on the grounds. The mall entrances were sealed, then boarded up entirely, and by the late 2010s, even the parking lot was blocked off. What remained of Westlake was left to rot in silence. Post-closure, Westlake Mall wasn't just abandoned, it was dormant. After Food World's closure, owner Anthony Underwood began storing vehicles and actively blocking off entrances, putting cameras inside, boarding up doors, and sealing the mall tighter each year, which was a major reason why the mall went mostly unheard of in the dead mall community. Over time, it was becoming an eyesore. Nature slowly crept up into the building as vines began dangling down the sides of the brick. Vandals broke windows, weeds cracked through the old concrete lake bed of a parking lot, and the interior sat almost untouched. No one spoke much about it, except occasionally in local lore, or when someone drove past wondering whatever might become of it. It was only in late 2024 that ownership seemingly changed, as the security dropped off and the inside became ransacked. This is when I first visited in March of 2025 with a camcorder. It was only after I learned that the mall had finally been sold again in May of 2025, this time to Range Light Investment Partners, an Ohio-based firm whom acquired the mall with a new plan to breathe new life into it, which meant demolition. So I knew I had little time to get back down again. And so after this second visit, shortly after in June of 2025, work gutting the structure began in the former Food World. The redevelopment project itself is ambitious. The site is being rebranded as Marvel City Business Park. What used to be the mall will be transformed into new light industry and warehousing. Just based on the renders, it's clear that this will be one of those cases where come 8 months from now, the mall will be totally unrecognizable, just looking like a warehouse in the shape of a former mall. As of mid-2025, Range Light says they hope to have some tenant spaces ready by the end of this year, but I guess time will be the judge on that. So after more than a decade of complete abandonment, Westlake is finally on the move again. It won't look like the mall we knew, but maybe that's for the best. Maybe after all this time, it's time for a new life entirely.
In the ghetto.
Folks, I want to take a moment to thank those of you that joined me tonight on this adventure. Westlake, for the longest time, was this unattainable anomaly for me, a mall wrapped in mystery, slowly decaying behind boarded up doors and rumors. It was a bucket list destination that I just never thought I'd actually get the chance to step inside. But to not only explore it once, but twice, and to be the first on YouTube to truly document it in full, that's something I'll never take for granted. It was an honor, because places like Westlake may vanish, but the stories we tell about them, those get to live on. Walking through the dark halls, standing beneath those yellowed skylights, and hearing the echo of nothing behind me definitely made me look over my shoulder more than once. And to even be able to have done any of this, to make these dreams come true, wouldn't be possible without you. This program is made possible by viewers like you, and I mean it. So to everyone who watched, commented, and took the walk with me, thank you. If you enjoyed tonight's video, be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes. Next Saturday, we head over to a Floridian city, seeing a mall in its final state before demolition wiped it from the face of the earth, quite literally almost bumping heads with demo workers, a small indoor mall that was once connected to a bustling strip center. Guess which mall we'll be at, and I'll shout you out in the next one. But until I see y'all then, have yourselves a lovely evening, and peace out, guys. See you later.